All right, y'all. So I'll get started. Should I just start?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to need you to do, I'm sure you got the notice of this. I want to make sure you're connected to the Wi-Fi on your mobile device. You have the latest version of YouTube, and I'm not looking at the ceiling more than the glass.
So,
And I want you to have Snapchat. I know you may not be actively using Snapchat, or maybe you are. The younger demographic is, but a lot of my college students and grad students gave up on Snapchat, but it is coming back, or is not really left, but it's really active. I want you to make sure you have a Snapchat account. So let me tell you a little bit about myself. Let me find my, there you go. All right. So hopefully you guys can see my slides. This is a 3D scan of me. It's kind of creepy. But there's all this technology that has changed that you can scan people, places, things, and make a 3D model of them without having to do like really heavy lifting stuff. Some people call this the digital twin. So that's a creepy scan of me. I'm Robert Hernandez. I'm a digital journalism professor in Los Angeles here at USC. And I focus on emerging technologies and how might they disrupt digital journalism. Just to kind of talk more context around that, most of my colleagues are working with technology that was created in the 1400s, mainstreamed in the 1800s. They really don't have to focus about the technology. They don't need to know how the technology works, if it breaks, if there's innovation. They have the luxury of focusing on content, whether it's the printing press here or if it's broadcast or what have you. They focus on the content. They don't have to worry about the technology. For me and for other digital folks, we're constantly looking at different disruptions in technology and proactively working with tech companies to see if this is the next printing press, or at least the next printing press for the next year or something, or a new printing press in our ever-growing toolbox of digital journalism. I work with media companies, certainly. We've done stuff with NPR, New York Times, LA Times, Al Jazeera, a whole bunch of stuff, trying to get them to embrace innovation. But like I said, I also work with tech companies that are creating these technologies and often are not thinking of content creators, let alone journalism, nonfiction storytellers. So I proactively reach out to them and I tell them like how they might tweak their tech so we can use it for our type of storytelling. One kind of random little thing, I just showcase the different type of digital stuff I play with. Does anyone know what this is? Has anyone ever seen one of these? I'm assuming A, you have pizza in your mouth, or you don't know.
Don't know.
All right. So this is an LED augmented reality fan, meaning that this blade has all these LED lights on there, and the blade spins fast enough that an image appears, right? So here's that 3D scan of me. You don't need special glasses, and this hologram appears. Here, a student made a floating VR logo, right? So I don't know what this has to do with journalism, but my job is to kind of look at this technology and think about like, how might we use this? How could we use this stuff? So that's my job. And I've been fortunate enough to convince the school to let me teach several classes in this space. And I have an emphasis because getting a minor or a major is complicated, but at least I have an emphasis of students want to come either as undergrads or grads, and I've had PhDs as well to kind of work with me to play with this stuff. You can now do that throughout the academic year. All right, so I mentioned installing apps. The two that I really want you to focus on are YouTube and Snapchat. I'm going to prod you and remind you along the way. First thing to kind of define is the two kind of mediums that we're going to be looking at. First is virtual reality. We probably all heard this stuff hyped up for decades. It's always been hype saying like it's here, it's going to happen, all this stuff. But it has become more real in the recent years than ever before. Even Facebook to kind of cover up its problematic news coverage, rebranded itself as Meta, which is a ripoff or an homage to the metaverse, which is what sci-fi writers talk about, which will be the next internet, right? Being immersed in the internet opposed to watching the internet through a browser window. And virtual reality, let's define it, is when you leave this reality and you immerse yourself in another. Again, with this headset, we're using sight and sound, but true virtual reality has you use all your senses, right? Sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of touch. In true virtual reality, I can walk around a virtual space and interact with it, pick up items, move things around, hold presence with you, right? And this reality can be based on real life, or it could be like your fever dream that you had, fiction, nonfiction, whatever it is. That's what virtual reality is. I leave this world and I immerse myself in another. Augmented reality means I stay in this world, I stay in this reality, and it is enhanced by digital assets, whether it's a 3D model or photos or videos or whatever. There's different iterations of it. You know, if you Snapchat, making your face into a puppy, or if you watch football, when you're watching football and it shows you when's the first down, how many yards to first down, that's augmented reality in really simple terms. If you play Pokemon Go, that was kind of augmented reality, but not really. But again, the difference is I stay in this world and I enhance this world. Lots of iterations with that as well. Smart glasses are the things that are emerging. They're starting to pop up. Spectacles is from Snapchat, the ability to do this stuff. One company called Magic Leap, their term for augmented reality is called spatial computing. The way that they view it is that think of you are carrying with you a computer that needs no monitor, because everything, the walls, the surfaces, are floating in space is the monitor. So maybe on the classroom, we can all see my video, but there's no projector there because we're all kind of seeing a video stream that is mounted on the wall. And on the wall to your right, maybe it's showing the latest tweets or the latest stock quotes, or perhaps that's what it should be there, but you've decided to put the NBA playoffs or something like that, right? Think about your house, your apartment. You might want to have really expensive art, but you can't afford it. Well, you can have virtual art overlaid there, right? The ability to do facial recognition. This is the creepy privacy kind of issues, ethical issues, but I'm really bad at names. So what if I had a camera that would look at your face and it would tell me the last time we saw each other? It would show me your Instagram posts, your Facebook posts, that you were on vacation or your mom was ill or something like that. And I can be a better human. And one, remember your name. And two, kind of like connect with you immediately and talk about like, hey, how's your mom? Oh, I saw you were on vacation. How dope, right? So those are these things that are possible, those kind of everyday ideas for augmented reality. And we'll play with that stuff. Lots of media companies have been more and more involved in these immersive spaces. And when I've given this talk, I can talk about how cool it is, but it is super lame until you try it, right? So I want you to get your phone, use a napkin, get the pizza grease off your phone, and I'm going to, so I often talk about all these different videos and I'll acknowledge them, but I don't want you to view this one yet. We're going to focus tonight on my students' work and the newest project that we just did, and then we'll break it down what we did and answer any questions. Hopefully it inspires you to play with this stuff, and I can answer some questions on how to do it. But just to acknowledge one piece that I show is called Clouds Over Sintra. It's about a young woman who's in a refugee camp from Syria. She's from Syria. No, Jordan. And she was displaced. We can watch this stuff on YouTube, and that's what you're going to do. And if we were in person, I often give out these little glasses that you can clip onto your phone and watch it like you're watching a headset. I don't think I have one on my desk here. I usually have them littered all over the place, but you get the gist of it, right? We do what our mom told us not to do, which is sit real close to the TV or the screen. And with these magnifying glasses, it makes it clear and in focus, and it feels like you're stepping inside. But right now, I want you to watch some of our pieces in what's called Magic Window. Our pieces, meaning my students and I, produce under the name JOVRNALISM. That's how you pronounce it. It's journalism, but instead of the UR, it's a VR, because we thought that was a very stupid, clever typo. And we had to trademark it because some psycho guy has been trying to rip us off for forever. So we trademarked it. We work, like I mentioned, with tech companies, media companies, and what we try to do is produce journalism, the first drafts of journalism, immersive journalism, using these technologies to tell these stories. And often we focus on underserved, underrepresented communities. I have two flavors of it, right? So in the spring, which I'll show you the work that we did this spring, it's traditional journalism, where we as a student, I teach it in a hackathon style. So last year, I brought the students registered for the class together, and we brainstormed, what do we want to cover, what topic, what community we want to work with, what technologies do we want to play with, are there media partners we want to proactively reach out to? And then over winter break or summer break, I go make those partnerships. But what we end up doing is we pitch the ideas, and then we go do the basic reporting for it, right? We go to a community, listen, engage with the community, gather the information, gather the elements we need for storytelling as ethically as possible. And then we leave the community and go do post-production and hopefully accurately reflect and tell the story back. That's basic journalism, right? A flip way of calling it is parachuting in. When an outsider comes into a community, sometimes they do a good job, sometimes they play up stereotypes, sometimes they do harm. But if journalism with the best intent is go to a community, gather the things, and leave, I have another version of this class that we do in the fall, where we partner up with members of a community and we train them on how they can use this technology, and they decide the stories they want to tell. And then my students learn by producing those stories. We don't decide the stories. We do proactively decide the community we work with, but the community decides what stories they want to tell. And if we have time, I can show you some of those projects. The project that we did this semester, we actually did two ambitious ones. If we have time, I'll show you the other one. We partnered up with the Arizona Republic to do stories around the indigenous community. We ended up covering the World Championship hoop dancing contest, an indigenous dance, which is beautiful and powerful. We've done stuff about decolonizations of museums, restorations of a river, and pre-contact canals. So those, we published one. We're going to focus on, do some other ones after the semester. But our main project that was really ambitious that we decided was to commemorate the 30th anniversary of the LA uprising, the 1992 LA riots, the civil unrest. And the premise was, how might we use these new technologies to commemorate this historical thing, right? So many of us know of these uprisings in 92 because of the verdict connected to Rodney King. Many of you were not alive. I don't think any of my students were alive when this all went down. But basically, LAPD beat up a Black man, and it was caught on VHS, and the video went around the world. The police were found not guilty, and, you know, an uprising ensued. That's the simplified and kind of inaccurate version of what happened, because there's a lot of complex elements that led to the uprising, including the fact that the Korean community had gone to South LA and bought a lot of the businesses and were at odds with the Black community. And by then, the Latino community had already become the majority in South LA. For those who may not know, South LA is Crenshaw and Inglewood. If you've heard of Dr. Dre or NWA, That's South LA, South Central, right? Lots of issues there. There was a Korean woman that shot a Black girl in the back of the head and was found guilty, but the judge said, this woman has suffered enough, no jail time, right? All kinds of messed up things were happening to this community. Cops were known for being racist, all this stuff. And so the verdict definitely was the final straw, but a lot of things led to that moment. And again, since my students didn't know, I have a dog here that whenever I'm on Zoom, he becomes all needy, so I apologize. So the students didn't know any of this stuff about the uprising, the causes and things like that. So there was a lot of research and learning that they had to do. One of the things that we listened to was Slate's Slow Burn. Season 6 was an 8-part podcast series about what led to the uprisings. I highly recommend that series. We also watched a documentary called LA 92, which you can watch now I bought it for $10 and then I saw it was on free on YouTube, but hey, I'd take it as a donation. And there's a lot of documentaries related to the topic. And I will disclose with you that while this story is really compelling, I was really afraid that we were going to use this cutting edge technology just to show Black and brown people committing crimes by robbing a store, looting a store, albeit for diapers and bare necessities, because the economy is horrible, all these factors, right? So I was like, gosh darn it, am I going to use this cool technology just to play up stereotypes? So I was really scared about that, communicated that to my students, but the resulting project is pretty powerful and amazing. And I want you guys to watch the piece, or one of the 4 video pieces. The first one of the 4, we're not going to watch all 4. We'll watch this in its entirety. If you have your headphones, connect your phone and your headphones so you guys don't hear it all at the same time and drive each other crazy. But if not, put it real close. What I want you to do is launch YouTube and do a search for LA Uprising JOVRNALISM. Note the spelling, LA Uprising JOVRNALISM. And it's chronological from when I posted. So this Echoes of the Uprising is the last story that was done. So the last story that I posted. But I want you to scroll as the video is showing, and I want you to select on the revisiting the photographs. It's 6.5 minutes. Really, it's about 5 minutes because there's a lot of credits and stuff like that. So I want you to, once you find that video, hit play. And I would recommend that you hold it horizontal. I know that we like to hold it, vertical, but I want you to hold it horizontal and watch the video. So I'm gonna watch it with y'all. And this is what's called Magic Window. If you look around, you're looking around the 360 world. I can use my thumb and move it around as I fall to Earth. This is actually using Google Earth VR, which is free. And so we were able to use it, and we decided to show different parts of LA where we went to where these iconic 1992 uprising photographs were taken, talked to the photographers that took the images, and had them tell us contextual information about what they experienced.
Showed up with their shotguns and their rifles, and they had guarded the supermarket throughout the night, pretty much barricaded behind boxes of cabinets.
And we thought, cool, we can put the photo lined up. But what made it extra amazing is that we blended the photo, removing the strong edges to blend with present day video. And it was like mixing ghosts of the past with present day reality.
Started yawning, obviously, because he has stayed up all night.
So I'm going to let you watch those videos, and then when you are done, come back to this reality. I'll watch it here too.
there's a
Robert, are these grad students or undergrads?
Both. I try to make my class accessible to everybody from freshman to PhD, which makes my life a little more complicated at times, but I think the secret sauce is really the dynamic of the students.
as they were oblivious to whatever American dream that they were chasing.
This goes really well with pizza, by the way.
What's funny, if you had a headset on, one of the challenges is when we're flying around the city, does that cause nausea? So I'll talk more about that once everyone has watched the video.
What is it a bit pixelated though?
During the 1990 riots, myself and white fellows were crossing the street. We're running out of gas, and this guy at the corner, Pico and La Brea at a gas station. When I looked over, I noticed the back of a 7-Eleven was on fire. So I stopped, got out of the car, walked across the street, and noticed the message on the back. And I've been photographing different signs and different stains. So this was quite poignant.
Good choice.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you make it to Tetsuki, let's just kind of wrap it up there, and you can finish it another time if you want to. But let's hear your reaction. What did you think? Was it neat? Was it lame? Did it make you throw up? Did it give you a headache? Yes, sir.
So, you know, I've had experiences with 360 cameras, but you know, I haven't used them personally, but I know people who do. But they never come across, you know, it's just something neat which doesn't serve a purpose. That's what I always thought. It just looked nice, but people didn't know what to do with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the first time I have seen the, and other than that, VR is also used for, you know, going back into history maybe, or reimagining a building, you know, or going through a virtual walkthrough. But having it being used to tell a story, this is the first time I've ever seen that. So I think it's it just opens new possibilities.
Yeah, that's actually a feedback that we hear a lot, that technology is the way the technology is currently used is really not impressive and often very gimmicky. And so one of the things here is that for journalists, I'm a journalist, my students are journalism, well, they're not all journalism majors, but they're in this class as a journalism class. We are using this technology with the purpose to tell a story. It's not about, most of VR gaming is shooting zombies, killing Nazis, which I guess that's fun, but it is also problematic, and we could talk about the ethics related to that. But it doesn't really take advantage of the medium, and we're one of the few spaces that have been proactively figuring out how to use this to tell stories. And the biggest compliment is when people say, like, I get it now. The technology goes into the background and the story steps forward and the technology supports the story and you get it. So that's our goal. So that's great. What are the other reactions?
A question.
Yes.
You put up a lot of reputable news organizations when you first put it out. What kind of videos do they want if they want something like this?
So that's a spectrum of different partnerships, right? So we've partnered, let's see, okay, for the New York Times made a deal with Samsung, which sold the camera. Samsung gave them like $1 million for them to use their camera. They paid them to use their camera and make content and publish it every day. So for a year, they had something called the Daily 360. And so we did a partnership with them when Trump got elected. Before we knew who the president was going to be, I said, hey, whoever gets elected, whether it's Hillary or Trump, the inauguration is going to be like historic. And so we managed a way to like almost had a bake sale to find a way to get us there. Wow. The miracles of the universe allowed us to get there with cameras and gear and all this stuff. Long story short, but we captured that. And so that was what the New York Times was looking for, right? They had more experience than most news organizations. For this project, for example, is a different partnership that I reached out to two local organizations and I told them, hey, we're doing this thing. Do you want it? Now, I knew that these two news organizations, the local PBS network and the local newspaper, were not the most innovative. And I wanted to make a partnership with them because I wanted access to their archives, because the photos and the videos will make this project resonate. So I don't think I told them in those terms, I need you so I can make my project better. But in their minds, it was like, look at these college kids. They're going to give us this thing for the 1992, the 30th anniversary. And oh, by the way, we need to come up with coverage. Hey, they'll help us with the coverage. So it was kind of a trade. And in talking with them, I'll talk about PBS. The people are wonderful. They got it, but they were concerned about their audience. I'm going to show you some more stuff that we did that they were like, nah, we just want one video. We want that photography video. We don't want to touch anything else. Everything else is just too innovative, and it would confuse our folks. And I made an argument, and the LA Times had a similar kind of vibe to it, but I convinced them in my argument, which was, hey, this is happening. You may have heard of the metaverse and all this hype stuff over there. You may not be ready. You, LA Times, may not be ready for it, but it is happening. And you can ride our coattails or stand on our shoulders to offer something pretty kick-ass that will make you guys look innovative and be presented to your audience that may or may not. The vast majority of people reading that newspaper are not going to watch this video. The people that watch the video are watching it on desktop. If they watch the video, a smaller percentage watched it on the phone like you guys did. And even a smaller, tiny percent will watch it in a headset, even though it's possible. But to be present and active and relevant in these spaces, in my opinion, is something that a lot of news organizations don't comprehend. So I proactively make partnerships with those news organizations to help them. And I honestly avoid the people I have to fight because I'm tired of fighting with legacy media that just doesn't get it. Like, let them die. Let them die. So I go and I've made a partnership with Al Jazeera. That was really great. Actually, the reason why we did the partnership with the Arizona Republic is because the executive editor was the executive editor of a smaller paper in Palm Springs called the Desert Sun. And they pitched me and they approached me. And so they paid for half of our expenses. They got us a huge Airbnb. And same when we went out to Phoenix for the project that we're doing with them. They paid for the stuff, paid for food, stuff like that. I paid for the rental cars. And I should disclose, like, I'm at USC, a private institution. You may have heard about like the wealthy people that try to bribe their way in, from Aunt Becky to Full House to the heiress of Hot Pockets, the Hot Pocket heiress. Try to sneak her kid in there. All that bribery money does not get to me. The money, not even USC, not even Annenberg, the journalism school, supports what I do with their finances. They don't even understand what I do, to be honest. But one alum who worked at Apple, and I think comes from a family that does philanthropy, decided to support not USC, not Annenberg, the journalism school, but me and my class. So he gave us a little bit of money, and that's what funds all this stuff. That and me working with tech companies for them to give us stuff or loan us stuff for free, or media companies where I can have them offset some of the costs. So it's not about like, oh, USC is a private school, it has that much. I don't see a dime of that. Like, oh my God, we can talk about that. We might need stronger drinks and pizza to do that. But I look for partners who will get it. And if we have time, I can show you last semester's project that just finished. We worked in collaboration with formerly incarcerated reentry folks, people that were sentenced to prison as juveniles for murder that were released and are trying to go back into life, life and everyday life. And I approached the Marshall Project. It's a micro, hyper focused site on about the incarceration system, right? The people who are formerly incarcerated. They're staffed by people, including the former people from the New York Times and these highfalutin places, including the former executive editor of the New York Times was there. And their approach is, to me, kind of tone deaf. Because when I pitched them the idea on how we do it, they're like, oh, they decide the story and they do it? Oh, no, we would never do that. It is our editorial voice that matters. And they don't know how to tell stories. We have to do it for them. And what we did is fucking amazing. And I shared, and I wanted to partner up with them because it's a perfect partnership. And they were like, we support you, but it's not for us. Because our editorial standards are different. A lot of people look at college kids as like kids, when as journalists, we're actually working journalists. And in many cases, we're way ahead of the industry because we have the ability to innovate and be creative without having to think about like, how do I put ads on this, or the subscribers, or might I offend somebody? We get to be experimental. That's one of the beauties in academia. So worked with all those different partners in a variety of capacities. Sometimes I gave content to them. The LA Times is off the record. I try to work with them. I managed to find a way to take my students to South Korea during the Winter Olympics. And like, I knew the deputy sports editor at the LA Times, and I was like, dude, I'm going to give you this stuff. Do you want it? And he's like, hell yeah, I do. But let me ask my boss. And it died on the vine. They had no idea. It's just the culture was horrible. The only reason I really doubled down, well, in addition to wanting access to the archive, the new executive editor at the LA Times, Kevin Medina, that is Moderna, starts with an M. He's awesome. And I've only heard wonderful things about him. And so I DM'd him, and that's how I started. He handed me to the deputy managing editor, and they handed me, and then they all like, once it got published and they saw our stuff, because let's also be fair, what we do is abstract. And if you've never seen or done this stuff, you have no idea what the hell I'm talking about. When I say, listen, our vision is we're going to have an AR portal and we're going to overlay the past into the present, and you can kind of, and they're like, dude, what are you talking about? But they were, because Kevin told them, do what this guy says, they were on board for that. And I was told that it was shared internally, and the jaws dropped. So I don't know if that answers your questions, but partnerships in a very traditional space is challenging. So I avoid the olds as much as possible and find the loopholes in the system. The person in the white shirt had their hand up. More questions, reactions?
Just a reaction, actually, because for me, just taking a look at that, you have the overlay of the image on this present day society, and it's just sort of like that juxtaposition of like the volatility of that time, and with how we sort of overlay that over just how things are occurring like on a day-to-day basis. It's like it's sort of like when you start talking about the LA riots, it's sort of like a little bit abstract, especially too if you have
it's history.
Yeah, and so to actually go ahead and see that, you know what I mean? It's just it's powerful in the sense where it's like, and even then too, just that image, it's just a small. There was that image of the burning building, but then all around you actually see just all the stores. But just to see just that little piece of it, it does sort of make you think and imagine it's like what else was happening just outside of that frame. You know what I mean? So I don't know. For me, it sort of sparks imagination when you start to see these kinds of when you start to see that type of story.
Yeah, that's what's powerful about this technology, and then to me, it's still shocking that people don't get it. I mean, like most of you probably did not know that you could watch a 360 video on your phone via YouTube, being in VR or immersive without having to spend a dime, right? A lot of people don't know that. So it's an opportunity for us and my students to be leaders in these spaces and to be prototyping thoughtfully these experiences that a lot of people dismiss, don't understand, and not to be rude, clearly don't have the creative imagination to see what it is. Again, my colleagues, when I tell them I'm doing stuff with Snapchat, they're like, oh, my grandson uses that. That tells you how my colleagues are. But like, they don't get it, right? I'll tell you, we've won Webby Awards. We've won, I didn't mention that in that slides. We've been fortunate to win a lot of awards. We won SPJ's Mark of Excellence Best in Show Award, meaning for the student, all the awards they gave out to student journalism, all the student journalism produced in the country for a year, our project was the best of the best. Now, that's a huge effing deal. USC Annenberg was like, cool, they retweeted my tweet. They just don't know how to kind of grapple with stuff. We've won 2 Webbies. We were just finalists for a 3rd Webby. I don't know if you know what a Webby is, but it's basically the Oscars of the internet. It's freaking amazing that we won one. And they're like, a Webby? What? And so it's just this kind of weird world. And that for the record, I'm being a smart ass and snarky a little bit, but for the record, that's been my entire career as a digital journalist, trying to convince my bosses of what the internet is, then convince my bosses of how the phone is important, or convince my bosses on how social media is changing the game. And then I thought, I'm tired of convincing them. Let me go make an army of journalists that are modern and get it, right? Maybe I was watching too much Harry Potter and I thought Dumbledore's army. I'm making the Hernandez army that is going to go take over newsrooms all over the country and be innovative and that stuff. So that's been my approach to do that. Because it's shocking to me. Like, this isn't like the idea of the overlay ghosts. Let me show you this article. Let's see if I can find it right here. What year was this? This was 2012, 10 years ago. 10 years ago, this was, I should tweet this out because it's crazy, it's 10 years ago, exactly. Someone did a photo exhibit of World War II photos overlaid on present day, I think was it Paris, or at least Europe.
Wow. Berlin, we were looking at this. This
right?
Is the night lab, the juxtapose. If you go to the
No, well, so they are after, they use this concept to do that. They use their photos, but this was a separate person 10 years ago that did that stuff. And when I saw this, I was like, my God, this is amazing, right? Because we walk by history, no matter where we live, every day, and we won't even know it. There might be a plaque, but we don't even pay attention to that plaque. And that's not just our city, our country, it's everywhere, right? And so this is just one use case to do these experiences. And I will argue that this immersive technology is going to be the next disruption, like the internet disrupted everything else. So if you're young and interested and curious about it, this is one of those opportunities, these waves that you might be able to ride into a career, right? And these are big waves and small waves, and timing, I'm gonna keep using this surfing analogy, timing is really important. And people have been saying VR is the future and it's here. They've been saying that for like 10 years too, for the record. And it crashed, but now AR is the next thing. I've always thought augmented reality is the thing. I actually did a class in 2013 and I tweeted out, because 10 years ago, I pitched a workshop. I did a talk about AR journalism and what I think we could do. But yeah, I mean, this stuff is really powerful and really effective. Did anyone, to go back to the reactions, did anyone hate it? Anyone say it's too slow, too boring?
I feel like the experience is completely different when I put a thing on. I can't fully focus on VR when it's too small and I'm like moving it around. It's like, you know, I feel like if I put the helmet, but then the helmet's a whole thing in itself, you know? I mean, one of the things I wanted to ask you, I could kind of fold a couple of questions in because I have a few for you, but like, one of them is, it was really interesting. This is the first time I've seen you talk about using archival material and incorporating any kind of history. One of the things that I find really interesting about a lot of what's going on is time is getting funny with what you're into. Because like, I feel like you and I have been like digital utopians for a long time. Like I was saying in 2008, 2009, no, there's this stuff you can do with your cell phone and it's going to transform journalism, and you newspapers, you better hurry up and completely rethink the way you're thinking of storytelling, because it's going to be locative storytelling and you're going to get into augmented. You know, I remember saying that. It's now been 14 years ago. Which like it's amazing how time, but at the same time, I'm in the history field where my fellow scholars are going like, wait, what? Did you digitize the archives? Well, why would I want to do that? I can just fly to Los Angeles and fill out the call slip. And, you know, they're like, still like, there isn't like the conversation about the digitization of archives, for example, which is transformed history, is scattershot. And it's not a coherent dialogue, and there's just so, you know, so it's like time is funny. Like we're way behind on that conversation, but a lot of us have been way ahead of the conversation about when's this stuff actually going to arrive? Like when's AR actually going to be something that we use, or when's VR going to, you know what I'm saying? So
yeah, totally.
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say a part that I cut out of my lecture because of time. I talk about the evolution of technology and the adoption rate of the technology and how it shifted. And, you know, I don't want to rehash it because we don't have time to do that lecture, but it's just speeding up. And I could either A, like some people, be upset that we're all addicted on our phones, or B, realize this is part of our life. How do I use this to improve my community and make them informed and educated, right? And stay relevant in journalism. And next step, this is not its final form. So why am I settling and plateauing thinking this is it? Like, y'all, the phone was way different when I was a kid. And like the internet dialing up, right? We can sound like old people talking about this stuff. So if I know this stuff is changing all the time, why would I be stagnant? And so there are people who can see it. It's as if you can read the matrix code and you're like, why aren't you doing that? And so it's an opportunity. Instead of being upset about it or frustrated about it, I'm lucky I'm a professor. I work with people as students that happen to be students that we just go do this stuff. And
are you frustrated at how slow it's been though?
I've given up about, I mean, like it's sooner than we think. And a lot of people don't even know it, right? So let's look at Facebook and how your grandparents might be on Facebook, right? Or your mom is on Facebook, right? From when you were on Facebook and you thought that was cool and you needed to have it, and some of you were maybe 13, which is crazy, to where we are now that your mom's on it and he's like, Facebook is dead. I don't want to do that. That's like a blink of an eye in like human timeline, but in technology, that's forever. Empires rise and fall. And so these things are moving quickly. But if you're kind of looking ahead and you see the trajectory, you can see Facebook, the reason why it went to Meta, in addition to trying to distract the bad publicity it was having, was because they know that's the future. There was a leaked memo from Zuckerberg 5 years ago where he was like, let's buy everything that makes VR. We need to own it. That is the future. Like, he hasn't blinked from that framework. So again, I don't know when it's going to land, but why am I going to wait for the New York Times to decide? They're going to leave me and people of color and East Coast voices out, women are going to be left out, trans people are going to be left out. Why am I going to let them decide this stuff? Let's proactively define it. And when they finally catch up to us, we've hopefully elevated the conversation. We've inspired the industry. We've moved it forward to be inclusive, right? One last thing to say, and I don't know you have your hand up there. The one last thing to say is, I'm Latino and person of color. I'm an advocate for inclusion and all that stuff, and we need to fight to have a seat at the table. But one of the reasons why I focus on emerging technologies, when it's fun, cool, yay, but really it's because I'm building the next table. And if I build that table, I will make sure it's representative and inclusive of the diverse reality that we live in, opposed to the table that is very ethics defined by cis white men. And if you're not a cis white male, you may be unethical, right? This kind of warped framing with the best intentions of the time. I don't have time for that. I want to make sure that we're including everybody, not watching just the Washington Post, New York Times, who I love and I have great friends there. Really building a table to ensure that we're all around there and it's more inclusive. Again, maybe utopian digital stuff, but at least I'm doing my part in that. You had your hand up in the back.
Yeah, Robert, I want to ask you, like, you mentioned that there are a lot of editorial policies of these different newspapers and even channels that limit, you and your ability to tell effective stories through different tools that you're using. For example, you're using VR to tell an impactful story, right? So, I mean, when we have these kind of editorial policies, so what's the alternative then to telling these kind of stories or using these kind of tools? I mean, where do you go then? Because if these are the people who are defining the set standard of a society, so where does that leave hardcore journalists like you or anybody else who wants
Sure.
those kind of stories or through those different platforms?
So the hustle is this. The reality is the vast majority of news organizations do not have the support, the resources to think, to innovate, to look past the horizon. A lot of them have been gutted, real bad ownerships, and it's a small team doing more with less. Okay, so that's one reality. The other reality is that even if they do have the ability, they don't take that courageous step. And I blame leadership. They just don't see it. They don't get it. A lot of them are former lawyers. They're just bean counters. They don't understand the role of journalism to the community and the responsibility there. I've been told that some of them are like, I'm just trying to make sure we get as many pennies out of paper advertising before we go under, right? That's their kind of mindset. The other is because they're afraid to take a risk, they're waiting for someone else to do it. And the only organization, or one of the only organizations that can do that, is the New York Times, right? Family owned, the darling of the media, empires. Everyone loves to hate the New York Times, but loves to love the New York Times. So if the New York Times does this, then holy shit, everyone's going to do it. Again, there's a disconnect because the New York Times is doing AR journalism, while we've been doing it for a while, the AR journalism, but they got paid millions of dollars from Facebook for them to do AR journalism. Facebook paid them and other news organizations to pivot to video. Even though they lied about the video numbers, they paid news organizations to pivot to video. And then when the video numbers weren't there and Facebook was like, we got what we needed, now everyone else is using videos, we don't need professionals to do those videos for us. The funding stopped and there were mass layoffs for the video teams.
I think it's also that's right.
Well, I was just going to say that. So for me, I know what the hustle is. And so I'm trying to inspire multi-levels of organizations to see the value of this, to see that it could be capital J journalism. And that's why I submitted for awards, even if my colleagues don't know, for it to be, winning these big awards, it shows that it's not a gimmick. It's not a flash in the pan. It has value. And I hope to inspire other organizations that have, you know, the New York Times has a team of 15 dedicated people with PhDs. Their full-time job is to do this stuff. And we're finalists standing next to them. And it's just us and a bunch of knucklehead college students and I, like, hacking through this stuff. And we're as good as they are. And so to me, I'm trying to prove to the industry, you don't need a lot of money to do this stuff. So to answer your question, I'm trying to inspire the industry for that. And I don't care about the national New York Times or the Washington Post. They have the money, they have Bezos to fund them. I care about the local regional publications, the public NPR stations that I love. I want to empower, hell, maybe not the news organizations, but the individuals, and say, hey, make your career more stable by buying this little camera and proactively start making your name for yourself. Just like I told them, like, Twitter, you should start using social media, or TikTok. I know it's the kids, it's wacky, isn't it? If you want to stand out in your career and you can genuinely talk, understand the culture, and use the vocabulary, maybe TikTok could be something that enhances your career. But that's my whole goal. And it's not just about immersive, it's all technologies. We need to embrace it with open arms when we normally embrace it with folded arms. You had a follow-up question?
Yeah, we're running out. I was gonna say, Robert, it's also just, I think it's become painfully obvious over the last 10, 15 years that these 60 or 70-year-old newspaper chain owners do not find it in their self-interest to figure out what people who are in their 20s or 30s, they realize that these things are their personal, these newspapers are their personal piggy banks or their personal sponges for money, and they're squeezing them to get every drop out before they die, or they leave enough money for their children to inherit. I mean, like, what does the guy the Canadian publisher who owns the Star Advertiser care about, like, preparing the Star Advertiser? I mean, he's spending billions on an oil refinery. He's not spending on updating the Star Advertiser's newsroom.
Totally.
And
to me, that's an opportunity for any one of you to do a startup and serve the community that isn't being served. Wait, I want to demo one more thing before. I know we're past time and you got to do this. So let's do this in 15 minutes if that's okay.
Yeah,
I want you to
have another question for you when we're done.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. So I want you to get Snapchat out. Snapchat, you know, you can use it to throw up rainbows and all that stuff. I want you to open Snapchat. And here's one that we did, our first one. I don't want you to scan this one. I just want to play this video for you. So you can see a lighter version or the newer version that we've done. This, when I show you the snap code, you're going to point your device to the snap code and you're going to press it like you're pressing a button, and it's going to load a snap lens, right? So that's what I want you to do. But just to kind of give you a demo, this is the piece that we did, our first one. I don't know if you can hear the audio there, but we did something called photogrammetry.
Hi, my name is Jennifer.
Where we created a model based on photos of an actual object.
Today. So welcome.
So this is an actual homeless person's dwelling, an unhoused person's dwelling. And not only is it an interactive infographic, but you can step inside and hold presence with her home.
You can charge that at a local library, which the majority do.
So even Snapchat,
Starbucks, Coffee Bean, etc., have done away with their
Snapchat was like, Professor, we love this idea, but it's never going to work. And we showed the creators of the platform, which is called Snapchat Lens Studio, which you can download and play with for free and publish this stuff for free. They were blown away with what we were able to do. We have since done lots of different experiences. And the one I want you guys to try is from the uprising. So get up from your seat, go to the screen, and I want you to, I picked this bigger one here because that's what the preview is, but you can select any one of those snap codes, point your device to that snap code, press and hold the button, make sure your audio is turned on as well. The audio switch is turned on. and it's gonna scan the thing and give you an icon for the project, right? So I'm filling the frame. I'm gonna do the Korean one. Might take a couple attempts. Oh, this one is, I pointed to the Korean one, but I got the one underneath. And what I want you to do is, it should say enter the portal and use the slider. Once you've loaded it up, it might say like download this lens for 24 hours, 48 hours. What you do is you tap to place, the doorway onto the floor. And then I want you to physically walk through that doorway. And when you physically walk through that doorway, the photographer starts talking to you and tells you about the photo. And you can then use the toggle. Oh, it's bugging on this one right now. But, oh, there you go. You can use the toggle between 2022 and 1992. So similar to the video, we just wanted to present it in a different way that you can physically, right? Let's say you're in Hawaii, you can physically walk to downtown LA and see the stuff and hear the traffic and walk around, and you're in that world. If you look back to the doorway's back to reality and stuff like that. So that's the thing that we've done. You want to see all, I want to show, wait, I got to show you another one. Here, I see that you're trying to scan. I'm going to show you something else that we did that is really freaking cool. We created,
Yeah. You don't have to. It has to be more like,
Hey, Robert, can you go back a sec? Kind of walk us through the scanning again?
I'm gonna put it in the chat so you can go to the URL. Let's see, let's go to AR photography. So there are some of those.
Okay, so now what mode do we just use the regular screen?
You launch Snapchat. Make sure Snapchat is open. You point the camera to a snap code, and then you press the screen like you're pressing that camera, like you're pressing that button, and it'll scan it, and then it should load the lens.
Well, then it was saying, you know, scans content related to your screen.
Something like that. And you should see a little icon, right? See that little icon down there? That'll let you know that you've downloaded the lens.
Swipe to try another lens.
Right, swipe to try another lens or other lenses. So maybe close it and try again. Sometimes it takes 2 tries to get it.
Okay. How do I know that?
Also, I noticed on occasion, projections may not be guessed, the resolution may not be good enough. So maybe scan the computer screen. Scan the computer screen.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, let's try that. Does that work?
Scanning.
Scan results. Yep.
I think if we scan the screen, it'll work.
Yeah, I think that I've noticed that when I've done it in class sometimes.
How do we enter the portal?
So you press and hold it.
That's cool.
That is cool.
So you're
primarily editing.
I can't get it.
Yes, you can.
You just
So you
press here and then hold.
You have to hold on to it instead
Right.
of pressing it.
Just press.
The other thing you can do is you can go to the website
Tap on it.
on your phone.
No, it'll focus.
Go to that website.
So you go to it, you tap on
Yeah,
it.
if you go to our website on your phone and then you go to the article, you click it. These are linked, so it can take you to the. It can load up directly. All right, so hopefully you got to see it. I want to show you one other thing. A student was doing a directed research with me and wanted to do what's called room scale, right? So we're talking about augmented reality. The video is not technically virtual reality. So a student we created a couple things. One, she created an infographic. So she recreated Florence and Normandy. This is a really famous intersection that during the uprising. So she created this infographic where you can click around and see the photos kind of overlaid there. Really kind of neat. But what's super cool is that she also created a VR piece that you could walk around in. So I'm using my WASD or my arrow keys. And so we made this what's called room scale. So kind of gallery. Look where the feet are, you stand there, and that's the photo of Tom's Liquor Store right there, right? Or I stand over here, or walk over here, ABC Furniture, right? So if I'm standing right at that spot, it lines up. Or if I walk over here, this is where that photo was taken of someone beating up a car, right? We put caption information in the back. That was one thing, using Glitch, which is free. And then the other thing that we did, let me show you this. This is something that you all can do together for the Echoes in Uprising. We collected oral histories, and we created something called a Mozilla Hubs. It's a free browser-based experience. You can create for free all these things. You can all join in right now, and we would be meeting here in person. So if you log on here, there's a mirror somewhere. Oh, here's a mirror. So that's my avatar right there. See that avatar?
Yeah.
So these are oral histories, and if you all jumped in here, you would take on an avatar, and we would see this exhibit. So it's a VR gallery that we created, all using free platform, free software. You don't need money to do this stuff. And there's a community of people teaching each other to do this stuff. And most of the people in that community, they look at me like a weirdo, like, what is a journalist doing here? Like, we snuck into a meetup gallery we did our Homeless Realities project. That's what won us that big award with the SPJ. I wrote to the organizer. I'm like, hey, we did this thing. I don't know if you're interested. And they're like, holy shit, be a part of the gallery. The gallery was all about like ephemeral, very Snapchatty stuff. Make your head an avocado. Watch a kitten walk on top of a donut, right? Very Snapchatty stuff. And then here we are with photogrammetry of a homeless dwelling that you can walk around, tour, and step inside. People are like, what the F? So
can you give us those two history ones that you just showed us, the LA one and the oral history? Can you give us the link in that, either in the chat or email?
Yeah, so I put the LA Uprising one in the chat, and another history one that we did is Catherine Chung. This is a project we did a year ago. Let me share that screen so you can see.
What about the oral history one? Did you give us that one?
Oh, that's in the articles of the post, the different projects. It's called the Echoes of the what is it called? Echoes of the Uprising, if I remember. Yeah, right here. So it'll have that there. But here's another history one that we did about the first Chinese woman to be a U.S. pilot, a licensed pilot in the U.S. Her name is Catherine Chung. She was a pilot in the 1930s. She was a badass barnstormer, stunt pilot. Back then, 1% of the pilot licenses given out were given to women, and 1% of the 1% were given to women of color. And so we did this 360 documentary that uses a lot of the 1930s kind of tone and motifs and stuff like that. So you can check out all our projects at JOVRNALISM.io. Lots of different things for you guys to play there. And if you have any questions on how we did it, I'm happy to answer it. And I see I'm like 20 minutes over. Did you have one more question?
Yeah, I had a couple ones, Robert, and I think maybe my students do too, but
I know you guys have to peer review, so I don't want to hold you guys up on that. So I'm down to talk if you want me to.
A quick question I had for you is, so these guys are all doing digital storytelling. what would you tell them are like, as you know, we're both journalists here, two of the most, say, important fundamentals of storytelling that they should think about in terms, because we didn't focus on that as much. And now I'm realizing, we focused on the tools and on using archives, but not on the techniques of storytelling. What do you think are most important to digital people?
Well, I think the thing to always remember is a good story is a good story, no matter what format. So story is first and foremost. Don't think of like, I want to do VR. What can I sandwich into that? No, what's a good story? What's really compelling that someone wants to spend their limited time with? And once you select a really interesting story, when someone's like, whoa, that's interesting, then you start to think about like, well, how can now I present this story using the new technologies, all the tools that are out there and stuff like that, right? So it's storytelling first. And a standard way of trying to figure out like, is this a worthwhile story? Is like, if you went to go to a bar or have pizza with a friend and you're like, oh my gosh, you're never gonna believe this thing. This guy showed me the Snapchat thing that blew my mind. Then that means it worked, right? That's a good story worth sharing, right? So that's something you want to think about. Think of the story first. You also actually, before that, a new type of thinking is product thinking, design thinking, user-centered design. And before you pick your story, journalistically, we pick a story first and then go. But the new framework is, who is your audience? Who is the demographic? What is the demographic? Who is your audience? And what's important to them, right? There's something called the D School at Stanford that talks about how to think about that, the process in doing that, being empathetic by listening and interviewing your community you're trying to serve, and not thinking like, this would be cool, but more, what do they want? What do they need? Not only in terms of the topic, but also how you deliver the product to them, right? So if they're on TikTok and you're like, TikTok's for kids, but they're on TikTok, if you are genuinely trying to serve your community and they're on TikTok, get your ass on TikTok, right? So what does the community want and need? How do they engage with content? And it's not just the mass community. It could be like the indigenous community or home renters or college students who are about to graduate. Like, what is that particular demographic? Maybe it's more skews to men, or maybe skews more to women. And then you think about like, if it skews more to men, then maybe I'll use Reddit and YouTube. If it skews to women, well, I'll use Instagram and maybe Pinterest, right? Because there are demographics on these platforms that you should think about when you're creating your stories, right? Lots of different factors. And then the show don't tell. Though don't describe to me like what the history was. Let me see it. Let me hear it, right? A good story has a lot of quotes and characters that make me understand the impact of the why, right? I'm working with my students right now in their thesis projects, and a lot of them did a lot of reporting, but the flaw in their products is that they wrote and told me stuff. I'm like, I don't want you to tell me stuff. I want the community to give me a quote. And, one quote that a student is doing a story about the new stadium in South LA where the Super Bowl was at. And an economist said, they hype up the value of how much the impact on the economy the stadium will have. It will have less impact. A department store leaving the community has more impact than that brand new stadium. And that quote stuck in my head like, whoa, that visualized it. That told me, that showed me the impact of the story and why I should care, right? So those are all the elements of good storytelling, whether you're going to do it in immersive or you're doing it in text. Those things transfer over.
Do you guys have any last questions for you? All right, Robert, we need to talk at some point about, I would love to be involved with you with a history project. And I have some ideas, not that you don't have any need for more ideas, but I know some interesting people like in New Orleans. I haven't heard you mention New Orleans yet, so that might be a new frontier for you.
Any excuse to get to New Orleans, I always take it. So I'm open to anything.
But I would love to work with you on, because the archival stuff, and now you've moved more into history, and like I've always been interested in just the emerging stuff with news. So, but both together, like, I'd love to talk to you about, you know,
Sure.
doing something in the future like that. So, but
Yeah, of
thank
course.
you so much for joining us. You know, we really appreciate it at the last minute. You know, thank you so much. I would
I
say,
hope it was
you know,
worth your time.
you're welcome to stay. They're going to share now their you know, storytelling if you want to critique it.
I can't. I gotta go. I promised my wife I'd be done.
Okay,
at 7,
good,
and
because
I'm
they're all
25
getting
minutes
shy,
over.
which they should learn not to do, but anyway. All right.
I'm sorry. Maybe next time.
What'd you say?
I have to run. I promised my wife I would wrap up at 7, and I realized I'm 25 minutes over for dinner.
All right, we better not get you in any more trouble then. All right.
But happy to connect. I'm Web Journalist on Twitter. If you have any questions, send me a note, and we'll nerd out together.
Great, thanks a lot.
Take care. Bye.